Here's 5 things I learned the hard way about putting a tree stand or saddle in a tree. One of the first things is to not be silhouetted. So when you're, looking to put up in a tree, if you can help it, depending on how close you can get into that bedding area and so forth, making sure you're not silhouetted or skylined by, whatever, if it's a buck or a doe, whatever deer you're hunting. Derek on our podcast team, he talks about using, snow camo in certain trees because, he's silhouetted by the sky. He's totally skylined. But if you can find some sort of backdrop coverage to not have an outline of yourself if you're in a stand, that's what I mean by not getting silhouetted, and I had to learn that the hard way. Another thing to consider is if you're hunting out of a saddle, you face the tree, and you can use that as concealment. So it's a nice little bonus of saddle hunting that you might not get from tree stand hunting. Tip number 2 that I learned the hard way from tree stand hunting is the placement of the stand or saddle itself. So considering saddle placement, again, it faces the tree based on where you're going to have that deer coming towards yourself or your desired, path of entry for that deer. In addition to that, on a tree stand, just be mindful of if you're right-hand dominant or left-hand dominant, what your shooting lanes are going to look like. A number of times as a young hunter, I've climbed up a tree, set up, and had the stand facing the wrong way. And then you just got to get down and putz around, and it's not a lot of fun to have to do all that stuff to get resituated. So if you consider that out of the gate, that'll save you some time, energy, and effort, and make it less of a hassle. The third thing I learned the hard way is tow your bow up immediately after you're clipped into your tree stand harness or you have your tether on for your saddle. The reason I say that should be the number one priority that you do is simply because it's happened several times where the deer show up and I am not ready. And it's shocking how fast those deer can show up when you've just barely gotten settled in after making maybe some noise trying to get set up and stuff. So get your bow pulled up into your tree as soon as possible. Get an arrow nocked. Make sure you have your release. Try not to forget your release. That's a critical tip that has cost me some opportunities because I just simply wasn't ready for it yet. The fourth thing I've learned the hard way is make sure you draw your bow back once you're up there. Draw your bow back and practice all the different shot placements you might have for different opportunities where a deer might come through. When I got the buck that's over my shoulder here in 2020, what I didn't realize is that my bow limb would have hit a tree limb upon release and would have been bad. I didn't practice drawing back. I didn't expect a deer to come the way that it had come, so that was the shot that I got, and I had to cock my bow sideways like a gangster to pull off a shot. Not ideal, wasn't the best shot. I got lucky with my shot placement and got the deer. So make sure you're drawing your bow back and practicing and making sure everything's out of your way and you have clear shooting lanes. Speaking of shooting lanes, the fifth thing that I've learned the hard way, I used to not have a rangefinder. Instinctively, I'm actually pretty decent at ranging things, but I don't recommend that. And, having a rangefinder is a great tool to have. And then just make sure you range things far ahead of time so a buck that I killed this past season in 2022, I knew he was either going to pop out at 30 yards or 20 yards based on where I ranged. And when he popped out at 20, I knew exactly what to do, set my single pin sight to 20, and let her rip, and got a dead deer. So range things, I range frequently because I forget the numbers. I'm thinking like, oh, this is 20, that's 15, that's 30, and so forth. And if I don't keep going through that over and over, I'll forget. So I probably range a little too frequently. It's also a fun activity to do if you're sitting in a stand kind of bored. Those are 5 things that I learned the hard way because I did miss a nice 8-pointer by having the wrong range. So just things to note for us Okayest hunters.